Welcome to XYPN Radio, where your host Alan Moore brings you into a community of fee-only financial planners who want to profitably and successfully serve Gen X and Gen Y clients. If you're ready to get the knowledge you need from leaders in your field, learn from forward-thinking advisors, and take action on your own goals, XYPN Radio is the show for you. Here's your host.
Hello and welcome to this episode of XYPN Radio. I am your host, Alan Moore, and today it's my pleasure to have on the show Joe Messinger, a financial planner and owner of Capstone Wealth Partners, which is a fee-only RIA in Ohio. So Joe and I were speaking at the same event, and I was honestly very dubious of his presentation before he started. The topic that he was speaking on was college planning, and from my experience, the majority of college planning content is based around whole life insurance and variable annuities. But his presentation honestly blew me away. This episode was awesome for two reasons. First, Joe demonstrated pretty quickly that he is the go-to expert on all things college planning related. And second, Joe has built a firm that is a shining example of everything we talk about on this show. He has a narrowly defined niche and expertise that makes his business fairly insulated from competition. He provides huge value to his clients, and he even charges monthly retainers. So for listeners that have been asking for interviews with more established practices that are using the tenets that we teach on this show, this episode is for you. You can find any additional resources that we mentioned during the episode at xyplanningnetwork.com/65. Also, be sure to go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to join our private group just for XYPN radio listeners. You can interact with other listeners, ask guest questions, and more. All right, without further ado, here's my interview with Joe.
Hey, Joe, welcome to the show, man. Thanks so much for being on.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
I am really excited because today we're recording on a Wednesday, and actually on Saturday, you and I met at a conference where I saw you presenting on the topic, which we'll get into a little bit later. And I was a little skeptical, which again, I will give some more details on later. But once you started rolling on stage, I was extremely impressed, and I'm thrilled that we were able to get this scheduled so we could get you on the show.
Yeah, I'm certainly humbled to be here, a loyal listener. So hopefully I can add some value for folks.
Wonderful. I actually didn't know that. I did not know you had listened to any of the episodes.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So let's just kind of start at the beginning. So have you always been a financial planner? What led you into kind of this career path?
Yeah, definitely have not always been a financial planner. I went to Penn State University and I graduated with a hotel, restaurant, institutional management degree.
So pretty much financial planning.
Yeah, so mostly financial planning with a minor in kinesiology, which is exercise physiology. Started out pre-med and then learned that I wanted to be in the restaurant business because I'd worked in them since I was a kid. And that was my passion through school, and they have a great program for that. Came out of school and went and moved to Atlanta, Georgia, actually, to chef a restaurant. And did that for a couple of years or a couple different locations. And it's an awesome business, but it is grueling for those that haven't been in it. It is really difficult. It's 90 to 100-hour work weeks and very few days off and no holidays. So at the time, just kind of started looking for other things that might be a good fit. And honestly, just had a friend that had been in the business that I went to college with and said, "Hey, I'm doing financial advising." And I said, I barely know what a PE ratio was from any of my business school overlap with my degree. But, it just kind of started from there. And lo and behold, there was a lot of people hiring for financial advisors, but it wasn't necessarily what I call financial advising now.
Yeah. So what year would that have been in?
I graduated 2000, probably the end of 2002, 2003 is when I started getting into the industry.
So kind of coming after the recovery, I guess, or during the recovery from .com bust, kind of when things were actually ramping back up. So it really was just that simple of like, I don't like my chef job, and being in the restaurant industry. And again, like I said, I worked restaurant when I was in college. The hours are atrocious. Holidays, you got to work every holiday and every weekend. So totally understand that. But it really was just friend in financial planning. I mean, did you, I guess, have an attraction to the work, or was it really just like, hey, this will get me out of what I'm currently doing and be kind of a stepping stone to maybe a new career?
Yeah, I think I've always been interested in finance. The hospitality program really is a highly specialized business degree. So we had a lot of overlap, and finance courses were a big part of that. And how to run the business was part of our degree. So it was, always something to it. And then, he said, you really just got to be a people person is kind of what he had expressed to me. And It essentially is sales. That's what it was for me. The path to which, didn't exist to kind of go and get a degree and come out and work for a financial planning firm at the time.
So what was the actual kind of that first role in finance? Was it kind of your typical insurance investment sales, or was it actually in kind of the world of planning?
It was sold as the world of planning, but it was for a large insurance broker dealer. So, getting started, it was definitely, you're going to work with families, help them structure their finances, but it was 100% commission role getting started in the industry and kind of the old friends and family model. But I lived in Atlanta, Georgia, where I'd never lived before. So I kind of had to go and beat the streets and network and just kind of got into it the old fashioned way and took a lot on the chin.
Right. Were you pretty good at that, and getting out and, like I said, just drumming up business, especially when you don't have any family and friends in the area? Were you successful in that kind of area of sales?
I was extremely motivated as an athlete growing up. I was motivated in all the sales contests and all those things where I would do whatever it took to win any contest. So I did pretty well in that environment and was able to get out and, be rookie of the year and win the accolades and those things, and which is great. But looking back, you kind of question some of the things you did. Once you learn what the business is really about and what financial planning is and those types of things, it wears on your conscience a little bit.
Yeah, we've heard that from a couple of different, guests that we've had on the show of you didn't know and you just couldn't know at that time. And then once you start to learn, it's like, oh man, there's just no undoing it, but it's just kind of part of learning that, hopefully we didn't harm too many people, but it's just part of the process, and it's just so interesting that how that business model has survived for so long, given how many people just kind of come out of it kind of with that same attitude that you had, which was just like, oh man, did I really do the right thing here?
Yeah. Yeah. So it was, getting started was difficult. And I kind of learned somewhat early on that finding a niche market to go to or a place to go was something that was interesting to me. And I pretty early on fell into the 403B market. And that's really kind of where I was able to really gain some traction and do well. A couple of school districts and a hospital in the Georgia area that really allowed me to grow for myself. And then I got into management about 2.5 years into the business of recruiting. So
at what point, so I'm assuming that, they had you get some of your licenses. Was this the point at which you started on the, the path to get the CFP, or was that later on?
CFP and what I was doing was never really even talked about, which was interesting. If anything, it was the CLU designation because we were an insurance-based brokerage firm. So, they encouraged continuing education, but it was really about that chartered life underwriter more than anything.
So we've had a couple folks mention the CLU. Tell listeners, what is the CLU and who should be actually getting it? Should fee-only advisors that are looking to own a firm, is the CLU actually a valuable designation?
Yeah, it's a designation in the American College. It's definitely linked up heavily with some of the heavy hitters in the insurance industry, the large players. The way that my path went was I actually did the chartered life underwriter and then the chartered financial consultant first. And the interesting thing, the chartered financial consultant, I believe, is 11 modules. And 7 of those that are in there are the ones that you need to take the CFP exam. So, I went down that path and got the CHFC and CLU first, and then went and took the CFP from that.
Then already had the education. So, So do you see the CLU as having value beyond just, working in an insurance agency, selling insurance? Is that something that you as a comprehensive financial planner now, that education was valuable for you?
Yeah, because again, a lot of the modules overlap. There's a couple of additional modules focused on more estate planning and the life insurance side. But a lot of the modules really do overlap. It is meant to be a good designation for financial planning. But if you have the CFP, honestly, I don't know that it's something you need in addition to.
Fair enough. But maybe a stepping stone on your way to the CFP.
Yeah. Yep.
So you moved into a recruitment, or kind of a recruiter role. Was that your kind of path to eventually launching your own firm, or did you have a position in between those two?
Yeah. So I was in Atlanta. I went from myself and grew to, I think we were about 12 to 15 advisors in the course of about 2 years.
Wow.
So I built that pretty quickly. And then in that time we were doing well. And they offered me a position to come to Ohio and run the Central Ohio region here in Columbus, where I live, which was a really good opportunity for a young guy, 27 years old. to take that opportunity. So I actually sold a book of business to a partner I had there in Georgia. That was my first experience with that internally within the company, and then came up here to Columbus and basically started recruiting up here again, building another team.
So what was the attraction of going from already having built a team to building a new team? Was there a reason for that? Because that sounds like almost a downward movement in terms of career progression.
Yeah, there was an opportunity here, and we had some management that had turned over. So they were looking for someone to come in. So I did take over a team here and was able to kind of grow from what was here, which was bigger than what I already had established.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so we came up here and doubled the team and got things rolling up here in a couple of years as well. So
I've never lived in this world. So tell me, what does it look like to sell your book of business? Is that pretty easy because it was internal, or is that, a lot of negotiations and conversations with clients and that sort of thing?
I think, it was a broker-dealer world, predominantly insurance and annuity, but there was some investment management. So it was a pretty, I guess you'd say, diverse book of business. So there was asset management and there was insurance trails. So it really was, they did have a good system for trying to figure that out, but it certainly wasn't a very apparent answer of how to value that business.
Gotcha. And so did the broker-dealer help kind of with all the transition and then probably helped fund some of the buyout and that sort of thing? Yeah,
they did. They facilitated everything and helped with everything because it was pretty internal. So
very cool.
Yeah, and it was a lot of proprietary product, which, getting to how do you have this epiphany of where to go. There was almost 99% proprietary product for a company.
So was that seed money then later on? I don't know how much those things are valued at, but was that a nice buyout that was able to seed kind of later goals and career progression? Or, did you take a major step back with the position in Columbus and have to build it back up?
It was a pretty lateral move as far as compensation, but it did give me some just assets, to work with. And
gotcha.
It's certainly the thing about management and that role and that environment is you can make a lot of money pretty quickly with commission-based sales. And that is good and bad, but that is how it is. You can make very good money really quick.
So then, okay, so you're building up the team in Columbus. Kind of what was the next step for you?
Yeah, next step for us, I kind of went through that and I was working 80, 90-hour weeks again, which I was trying to get away from in the restaurant business. Building a team, winning competitions, and I kind of just had this, epiphany moment, the tipping point of saying, I can't do this for, the people that were saying that we serve. I couldn't sit in one more high-level meeting with senior executives because the word client hadn't come up in about 2 years.
Whoa.
It was all about product and sell this and these sales and numbers. And, I just kind of came to a point of saying, I can't do this anymore. Knowing what going through and helping families, I just, I hit that tipping point of saying I have to find a way out of this to help families.
I think consumers would be shocked if they sat in on any of those meetings, when we talk kill ratios and that sort of thing. I think just the language that's used that, intentional or not, just breeds this unhealthy culture, which I know they're trying to go after. FINRA is starting to, I guess, coming after awards and things like that based on the sale of products that aren't ideal and that sort of thing. But I think a lot of that is certainly still going on.
Yeah, I think it is. I think there is a positive push towards getting away from those things. But yeah, like I said, it was just so, focused on what was best for the company. I mean, there was literally contests to drive stock price or shareholder values and things. And it just kind of got to a point where you're going, if we sell this much of this product and we're going to do this much better. And so push this. And yeah, I think the consumer would be shocked. And I think, people that have never been in that side of the business that are in the financial planning world, that's probably pretty shocking to them.
Yeah. And I'm one of them. I started out fee only, so I never had the opportunity to see that side of it. Probably glad I didn't because, one of my top 5, according to Strength Finder's personality exam, one of my top 5 strengths is competition. Like I was very awards driven as a kid. I probably would have thrived in that environment of, trying to win the next award. And I think it can cause you to probably lose sight of what you're actually doing. And it turns it into gamification, right? It's just a game to try to win. It's not, people's money and people's lives anymore, which is probably intentional. They've got highly paid psychologists on staff.
Yeah. There's definitely a lot of psychology behind those contests and getting to the numbers they want in their bottom line.
So is that kind of that process, though? One of the things, it sounds like you're obviously a people person. You had that side of the personality, but, sales training coming out of some of those programs is hard to beat, is my understanding. I mean, is that really where you learned sales and kind of just learn the process of how to actually get people to sign up for whatever it is that you're offering?
Yeah, I wouldn't trade that for anything, because there's a right and a wrong way to do things in those organizations. And myself being in leadership, my job was to help teach people. There are those that would say those that can't teach. Mine's a little bit different, because I say, if you really want to master something, teach it. So for myself, teaching a sales process, you really have to know it cold, backwards, and forwards. So, those systems and systems and beliefs will drive any organization to success. And just having a set way to do things is really something we've taken with us as we built out our firm here.
Yeah, we had a sales coach, Nancy Blakey, on, who was my sales trainer, on the podcast back in April, I guess. And she kind of said the same thing. It was just like, sales is a process. And I think a lot of us in the fee-only world particularly want to say, like, we don't sell anything. Like, we don't sell, because we don't sell products, but we do have to sell it. And in my opinion, selling financial planning is harder than selling a product in many times, just because they actually have to pay a fee for it. It's not wrapped into a commission. So you do have to know sales. And I guess no better place to learn than from, folks that have been honing a sales process for, 100 years in the insurance world. But so you said you had an epiphany, kind of saw the writing on the wall that this wasn't for you. Kind of what was your next steps career-wise?
So like I said, was the epiphany. And also around the same time, I began to realize that there wasn't a lot of good information out on how to actually pay for college and help families in that space. So, part of it was necessity of a marketplace that we saw a big demand. And then also I had been working with my current business partner. We've worked together for 10 years now. He had worked for me, and we kind of together were kind of seeing what was going on in the financial planning space. And when you're from that world, the fee-only world or the financial planning world, they kind of hide it from you. It's almost like they don't want you to know it exists if you're in that world. But we kind of began uncovering how you could do this. And around that time too, technology and the cost of starting an RIA became accessible. So, this was, 2009, and we were going, I think we can do this with a couple laptops, really, and get going. So the barrier to entry, we don't need a huge office and all those things. It really kind of became, hey, we can start something with our limited capital and get rolling without having to put too much on the line. So that was part of it too.
So the presentation, I alluded to this earlier, said I would mention it again. The presentation that you gave, it was for the central, or I guess it was all of Ohio Next Gen groups. 3 different Next Gen groups got together, and you and I were both presenting there. But you were talking about kind of your college pre-approval process. And I want to dig into it here in a bit. But it was kind of funny because when it first went up, I knew you were like you were selling some type of loan. I just knew it. When I saw the college pre-approval, I was like, oh my gosh, Next Gen got duped by this guy coming in with, and you had mentioned to me, it's kind of like a mortgage. And I was like, oh Lord, here we go. This should be good. Like, I'm going to have to rail on you later on. But I quickly learned you're fee only, you're fiduciary. You are just a college planning expert. So a lot of advisors ask the question, like, how do I find a niche market? And you have just the perfect example of a niche firm that has a niche service and pricing model and all of that. So did it really just evolve out of conversations? You said you were in the 403B marketplace just because you found success there, and it just really did evolve? Or was there a certain client or a personal situation that happened that you just realized this was your space that you wanted to be in?
Yeah, I had a number of advisors working for me at the time, and they would come to me with questions in this college funding space. And I would say, well, go ask their CPA. Or go ask another financial advisor. And it kept coming back to me. And then
no one knew.
Nobody had any answers. No one knew. And then it also, as I'd done some digging, I was looking for college planning experts. And there was nobody in the space that wasn't insurance-based. It was all insurance-driven college planning advice of how to shelter assets, which at the time I could certainly do, but that wasn't the solution for everybody. So
variable annuities, it's always the answer, Joe.
Yeah,
come on.
Yeah, or life insurance. Just put it in there. It solves everything. Swiss Army knife, financial planning.
So you just kind of it just kept seeing the same questions over and over. And I imagine if you had a bit of a target market that, again, if you're playing in the 403B space, you're probably seeing some of the same stuff over and over from a typical client, kind of profile. And I think that's where a lot of niche markets come from. Honestly, like I don't think very many people just like wake up one day or, are standing in the shower where the best ideas come from and think like, hey, you know what I'm going to do? College planning. I think that's a good plan. Usually it's something that has happened, over time, and you just kind of realize the need.
Yeah. And then, and it evolves over time. I mean, you don't become an expert overnight, certainly. But as we began working with people, the cool thing about our families that we work with is that, we get to talk to them about the things that they're most passionate about, and that's their kids. So, and their kids' dreams, and, part of that American dream of we want something better for our kids, opportunities we didn't have. So it really brings down some barriers, and we're able to have a really cool relationship right off the bat and talk about, getting serious about goals and what's important to them and all those things.
So when you were starting your firm, did you have this kind of college planning focus was going to be the focus of your firm, or was it more just, hey, we'll work with anybody, just kind of get off the ground, and then this evolved later?
Yeah, getting started. I came from a management role, so there's no book of business. We started from scratch. My business partner had a very small one. So we really just started from scratch. So we did go out and offer financial planning to friends and family and things like that, but it was a very limited set of folks just to kind of keep the lights on. But we did start out with the intent of wanting to market and get into this marketplace, so which was actually more difficult than we thought.
Yeah, so talk about that. Why more difficult? Because if there's so few people in this space, it seems like a, ideal marketplace. You're fee only, you're a fiduciary, should be easy, right?
Right. Yeah. Should be easy. Our initial thought was, hey, we'll just go and we'll connect with the counselors at the high school, and, they'll let us come give talks. We're financial planners, been doing this a long time. And so we thought, that's a great plan. Let's go do that. And lo and behold, there had been people that had kind of tarnished that reputation of a financial advisor that, unfortunately was really an insurance person. So there's a lot of guards up around anybody that's doing any kind of financial work in the school systems, and rightfully so, now that I've been doing this long enough.
So that kind of the initial marketing path did not work. Kind of what has been successful for you from a marketing standpoint?
Yeah, so a lot of it is the give first mentality, wanting to give our time. So the interesting thing about this market is the folks around it. So I began to network with college admissions folks and network with different nonprofits that are in the college access space. So giving my time and my energy and my talents, I suppose, to, what we know, to folks that are trying to, help first generation college students and organizations that are helping support scholarships and those types of things. And that really allowed us to kind of get in and network with the right folks, and volunteering for the Ohio Commission of Personal Financial Education, which was a collaborative of for-profit, nonprofit, and universities. Really gave me a look under the hood of what's going on. So a lot of that I didn't make a dime from, but I learned a ton and made great contacts. And that really kind of acted as a catalyst to get in with the right folks.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you were learning one, you were in a way prospecting and networking and that sort of thing, but you're also learning your niche market, right? And kind of the expertise, continuing to hone that expertise to be able to serve your niche market. Because it's not like there's a certification course in how to be the best college planning, financial advisor that's fee only, right? So like you had to go learn this really boots on the ground.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was really educational. And like you said, at the same time, it's building those folks up and trying different things. I mean, what we're doing now is very different than it was 6-7 years ago. It was a lot of networking, going out and shaking hands. And whereas now we've certainly gone to more of a, I love doing regular content on our blog and doing videos and being online and webinars as opposed to all live events. So we're excited for the future. We feel like we're just scratching the surface.
So I guess what did those initial couple of years look like in terms of growth? I mean, where were the clients coming from?
We were able to connect with a few folks, and then people, it's interesting once you tell people what you do, how that mushrooms. Once you get out and tell a few people, if you think about our market, everybody that has a junior in high school knows 400 other parents that have a junior in high school at their high school. So we were able to kind of begin through that, and then strategic partnerships was the other way. So we don't have traditional referral strategies, we work with ACT prep companies and we work with career guidance companies and those types of folks. Those are how we really have grown our referral and base. And we couldn't do it without them, helping support our business and bring us good families that need what we do.
Yeah, it's again, what we preach on this podcast with niche marketing is that, folks will say, I want to serve young professionals or I want to serve women or, some overly broad marketplace that's at least further defined than alive. But, and they say like, well, where do I go find clients? And the answer is, well, if you're serving everybody, the answer is everywhere. But whenever you start to narrow it down and you say like, I want to work with families, I'm putting these words in your mouth, so you tell me if this is wrong, but we want to serve families that have a freshman or sophomore in high school and is looking at college planning, starting to have those conversations. So we need to start the planning in freshman, sophomore year of college. So we're going to target those folks. Well, then it starts to become really clear who the centers of influence are. And it's not attorneys and accountants necessarily, right? Like there's college admissions folks, there's high school guidance counselors, there's all these other areas where you can get really specific with people that honestly, they don't hear from financial advisors nearly as often as the estate attorney down the road does. They get hit up all the time. So it's just amazing. You're just such a great example of what we're constantly preaching and the way to do this, I would say the right way, which is you just got to be really specific because it makes everything else a lot more clear. Yeah.
Yeah. If you can be specific, it does give you clarity and it's a smaller pond. Like you're not serving everyone, but the referrals and the introductions to other folks that are market participants, they're not competitors, but they participate in the same market. It becomes fun after a while. So, which is great,
Sure. Because you're all kind of serving that same group of people, which, you all love because you're all working with them. So you said like some of your process and such has changed. I guess what have been your learning experiences just from marketing and a fee structure and service model, that sort of thing? Like how has that evolved for your firm?
When you get started, I think there's always, you have the pie in the sky and everything is going to be great and dandy. And whenever I talk to other folks wanting to start any business, but particularly this business, is that it's going to take probably twice as long and cost you twice as much as you think because you're not factoring in the mistakes that you'll make.
Very true.
And some of the analysis paralysis. So I think as you're getting started, it's easy to spend 2 days looking at which CRM to use and a week on which financial planning software to use and then switching financial planning softwares from one to another. And, just all those decisions we have to make getting started, it stunts your growth because you're not focused on serving clients. You're focused on a lot of the business operational aspects. So I think, our business now, we know what software we want to use. We know our CRM, we know our process, but it's much more refined than it was long ago. So I think putting some time into that, but not getting overly obsessed with it on the front end of starting.
Yeah, it's the challenge of starting. I mean, honestly, it's where XY Planning Network came from. And you had joked that you wish we had been around when you were starting. And really that was the model was like, I didn't want we have almost 300 firms now. I don't want 300 people going out and evaluating all the CRMs. I'd rather have a team of experts that are evaluating, making the recommendation, just make it available. It just kind of streamlines some of that. But even with some of the technology decisions made and just, some processes built out and things like that, ultimately your first year, you actually don't do a whole lot of financial planning. I think that was a big shock for me was, I got to the end of my first 12 months and like, I really didn't do much planning. I did a whole lot of prospecting and talking to folks and that sort of thing. But the actual number of hours spent planning, pretty limited.
Yeah. Yeah, that's for sure. And that shifts. I don't know when that shift happens. I mean, for us, it was probably around year 3 or 4 where we're going, okay, we've got to get a handle on client service as well as client acquisition and operations and, the financial aspects of the firm. It's interesting.
Yeah, because I think we take for granted when early in the firm, we have nothing but time. So we're out just drumming up business and then we get those clients. And truth be told, we probably could spend more time in the first year or two defining our process, getting our operations set up and that sort of thing. But it's just not a priority, right? Like we're just trying to eat. So we're out trying to find those clients and then it's like, okay, well, eventually we'll deal with it. And when you do get to the dealing with it, it's kind of tough because, again, now you're still trying to generate new business. You've got a bunch of existing business and suddenly maybe you have a staff member or two. And that it's just that it's a really cool inflection point, I think, because that's when you become a business and not just a startup. But it's a tough transition that I think folks need to be aware of is coming. It's really cool to we don't have a lot of folks that we bring on the show that are in the position that you're in, which you've kind of looking back over the last 6 to 7 years. But I think it gives a great, roadmap for firms that are in that second, third year. They're kind of starting to see these issues come along. It's like, you got to start planning on them because they will hit you soon. Yeah.
Be it a service calendar. I mean, it's hard when you're in survival mode because, we're not in a get rich quick industry. We're in a get rich slow. It takes a long time to build retainer business that sticks and that's the idea. But, when you're in survival mode, you've got to go and find more. But yeah, I think it's, building, if I could kind of go back in time, kind of the operational side, but also the, what do I want my life to look like? And that's kind of where we're at now is, okay, so we add more clients. What does that mean to our time and how do we staff for that? And, how much do we want to work in a week and what are our hours? I think getting started, I'll meet with you at 7 p.m. at your house. But, now it's like, we're pretty set. 8:30 is the first appointment, 4:30 is the last appointment, and it's either online or in our office. Like we don't deviate from that much now. So it's very different.
Yeah. And isn't it funny how, you spend the time or you're in the restaurant industry, you're working 80 hours a week, you say, screw this, there's no way I can do this forever. So you go into, the insurance company and you start to build up and all of a sudden you're working 80 hours a week and you're like, okay, yeah, I'm back here. Screw this. I'm not going to do this again. And we get to survival mode in our RIA. And suddenly by the time it's all said and done, we're working 80 hours a week and going, dang it. How does this keep happening? And you want to work hard. The first couple of years of running a business is a grind. It is not a 40-hour-a-week job. It's certainly not a 20-hour-a-week job getting things going. But I totally agree. You've got to keep lifestyle, kind of what you want your life to look like in front of you. Maybe once a quarter, be reviewing. Like, are you actually doing the things that you need to be doing? Are you going to the gym? Are you spending time with your family? Are you doing date nights with your significant other? Are you taking a vacation? Are you actually doing the things you need to be doing to stay healthy and stay engaged? Because there will come a point, it's just so hard to unwind it. It's a lot easier to build it that way from the start.
Yeah, I think if you can cast a vision, that's one of the beauties of entrepreneurship. No entrepreneur said, I want to go work 90 hours a week until I die. It's kind of like, kind of both. Like you said, you gotta really get out there and work hard. But, also at the same time, be conscious of what you want out of your business and, who you want to serve and what your mission is. So,
yeah, I remember Tim Ferriss in the 4-Hour Workweek mentioned that where he said, entrepreneurs, we just tend to just start doing this 9 to 5 grind and suddenly we're working 80 hours a week and we never asked ourselves, like, is this really the life that I want? And so, okay, so tell me about your fee structure for new clients. So I'm a new client. I've got a freshman in high school that we're interested in college planning. So you're our guy. What does your fee structure and service model look like to work with me as the client?
Yeah. So it may be helpful for context to
that's a good point.
Talk about our college pre-approval process. Yep. And kind of what we've engineered.
This was the scam I was convinced I was going to shine a light on. And I promise there's no scam here.
Yeah. The essence or the spirit of it is our belief is that funding a college education should be pre-approved, just like you do if you go to get a mortgage, and that a bank would not just give you a blank check and say, go buy whatever home you want. But with college, we're doing that every day. We're letting 17 and 18-year-olds mortgage their life for an education. So we really think there is a process to getting to a right amount of what a family should pay for an education for a particular career path. So, part of that is establishing a budget. So being honest with yourself about what you have on hand, be that in 529 plans or other resources. And then, from there, you kind of budget out and say, what is the maximum amount of student loans? Our belief as a lot of good planners is you should not take out more in student loans than you think you're going to make that first year out in that career. So, that's something we drive home, and then we go into that process pretty deep. And I guess the one thing that we're trying to get out to the financial planning community as well is that we've got to get away from the mindset or some of the old adages of, you can't take a loan for retirement. And there's only one way to pay for retirement and lots of ways to pay for college. We meet with hundreds of families, and every single one of them wants to help their student and their kids pay for college because they think it leads to a better path for them. So that's just some of the things that we see that we want to hopefully begin to raise the awareness that, college is expensive and getting more. Parents and advisors need to really just take notice and get educated on this.
Yeah, it's a really good point that you make because it's the art and science of financial planning, and the CFP teaches us the science. It teaches us there's only one way to pay for retirement, lots of ways to pay for college. It gives us all of these anecdotes based on the science, but it ignores that, ultimately that parent wants their kid to go to college. They want them to better themselves, and they want to give them everything they have in order to make them successful. And honestly, there are a lot of people that will forgo retirement to help their kids succeed, right, wrong, or otherwise, whether you agree with it or not. Just standing around and saying like, oh, that's the wrong answer is not helpful. And so by having a process like you do, which I want you to dig in a little bit on the pre-approval, because I think this is so awesome and what that actually looks like. But by giving them a process and saying, here's going to be our process to determine how much college you can afford. And as you said in your presentation, getting to the end of that and just going, we'll just figure out the rest of it later is not a plan. That's not the way this works, right? You can't just say like, oh, thank you, bank for approving my $250,000 loan. I'm going to go buy a $500,000 house and figure out the other half of how to pay for it, right? That's just not the way it works. And so that's kind of the model you've built is, how do we determine the maximum that we can actually spend reasonably and then start to look for colleges that are actually in that, price range?
Yeah. And part of that, we always advocate, hope is not a strategy. You can't just apply blindly to schools if you have no idea you can afford them, because telling an 18-year-old that just got into an Ivy League that now they can't go when they did the work to get in is a really difficult conversation.
Yes, it is.
So, having I always say meaningful tools to have a good conversation with a teenager around money is really important, because you want them to understand the part they play in this and what you bring to the table. And money's a sensitive topic, but we're talking about $100,000 to $300,000 investment. And I don't know any investment advisor that wouldn't perk their ears if they were talking about a $300,000 investment.
Yeah, when we throw in opportunity cost and spending 4 to 6 years in school or more, this is the biggest investment we'll ever make. We used to think of the home as the biggest investment, but at least a home you can sell it. Yeah. You can't sell your education. And one of the interesting things, you touched on this too with, bringing in your 17-year-old, is I was reminded because I just got done reading The Opposite of Spoiled by Ron Lieber. And I don't know if you've read that book, but it really does touch on a lot of these topics of we don't talk to our kids about money. Why not? What are ways to do that? And this is a great example of a way to empower the kid of a client or, a young person with the decision of, how are they going to invest their money? And it's not just they get to go to any college and mom and dad just pay for it and everything is good. I mean, even the most wealthy families stroking $300,000 checks is a really, really big deal.
Yeah. I mean, they have money and resources because they're smart with their money typically.
That's such a good point.
Yeah. And a lot of them, that we see, typically first generation millionaires that come into the office, they're going, I understand, and we may have the resources, but are there colleges that we can pay a lot less or half that to and get a really good education still? Those are kind of conversations we have, and part of it too, the not saddling kids with student loans, it's so they can take a job that they actually enjoy and do something they're passionate about.
And not just whatever pays the most or fits into a payment program or whatnot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so those are some of the things. So, I don't want to get too caught up on that, but I just that's what we're passionate about, and for families and for the advisory community is we got to take a heightened view of this and have some process, but keep it simple for families so they're not intimidated by it.
No, I love it because it allows you to kind of, and I'm happy for you to show off your expertise, because I think this is so important, is because I've never met anybody that knows as much about the college admission and financial aid process as you. Because you're the expert, you're the boss on this topic. And again, I'm giddy because this is everything that we talk about with niche marketing, and just how, as you develop that expertise and you can put it out there and you can have these conversations. If I'm trying to decide between you and some, run-of-the-mill advisor that works with individuals, families, institutions, and women and does a little bit of everything, and they have no idea how college age packets really work, I'm going to hire you. It's a clear, decision. So your process, you kind of touched on the beginning of it, which is we get to a pre-approval number. You can afford $200,000 or $300,000, whatever that number is. And then you literally help clients evaluate different colleges and the total cost of those colleges. Is that right?
Yeah. So we do things a little bit different. We don't do free consultations. So we charge $349 for our initial consult. Families come in and we go through and we determine their expected family contribution based on a variety of different formulas, which is basically the minimum amount that the college expects you to be able to pay out of your income and assets. So, and then we stack 10 schools up side by side and give you a projected net cost at those different universities and run through the different financial aid policies of the different universities so you understand what you're getting into. So it's a proactive instead of reactive approach to figuring that out. So that's about a 90-minute session, and we charge $350 for, and I've never had anybody ask for their money back.
So that's kind of in many ways, that's your prospecting. I mean, it's like you come in, is this college savings question, or how to plan for college and how are we going to afford it question. So you're do you do this with all of your clients before they become ongoing clients?
We do. The vast majority have either sat on a webinar or they're referred or they've been to a live event. So yeah, we do charge for that initial consult and tell them, bring in all your information, and we'll, regardless, you're going to get a lot of value out of this conversation. I would say if you're a do-it-yourselfer, if you work with another advisor, or if you're looking for an advisor, you're going to get good value out of that regardless.
Yeah, because they're paying you $350, but they're getting a whole bunch of expertise. And the end result is actually extremely valuable, which is, hey, this is how much you can actually afford, and an example of some different colleges and what they actually cost. Because that was one of the really interesting things in your presentation where you say, like, here's a public university and a private university. They say they're $50,000 each, but are they really? Or even like, I think one of your examples was a public university that was $25,000, a private university that was $50,000, and the private university ends up being cheaper because of all the aid packages and how all that works versus the public school. So just knowing all of that and being able to show a client, that's worth way more than $350. So you're providing huge value. You're getting paid for your time and expertise. And what better marketing than to walk even if you're doing hundreds of those, to walk hundreds of people through your process, because they, again, know lots of other people that are in a similar position that they'll refer your way. And suddenly you have this huge prospect pool of folks that, may be looking for ongoing services, which you also offer.
Yeah. And it's interesting too. I think the people don't come unprepared to a paid meeting.
Very true.
They're going to come prepared and they're going to do their homework. And I love that. They come with spreadsheets, they come with tax returns, they got all that stuff ready to roll. So we can really roll up the sleeves and get the most out of their time with us.
So, you're very narrowly defined here, which obviously I love. So all of your clients are going through this initial kind of college price, evaluation, this pre-approval, basically your pre-approval process. So they get to the end of that, you're giving them deliverables in terms of kind of what you can afford, charge graphs, all that sort of thing. What is the process then to evaluate if they're an ideal client for your ongoing service, and kind of how do you pitch the ongoing service once you've essentially, what many advisors would say, you've given away all your value in that $350 meeting?
Yeah. So from there, that initial meeting is really, we always say, this is just your current reality. If you want to help closing the gap between where you're at versus where you'd like to be, that's what we do. And our belief is that college, retirement, investing, and cash flow should all be part of your solution, because you can't rob one to pay the other. You have to make sure that they're balanced. And so kind of our process from there, we only have one type of client, and it's comprehensive. Most of them join us when their students are sophomores or junior in high school. But, we only have one service going forward. And for that, we charge. It's comprehensive financial planning with a very deep focus on college, obviously, helping with financial aid forms and all those types of things.
So how do you charge for that? So, they pay the $350. They say, okay, I'm ready for ongoing service. Kind of what is your fee structure then?
Yeah, we like to think it's pretty simple. I think it's similar to XY's. A lot of what folks do, we charge $950 as an initial plan setup. And that covers the first 3 meetings that we do. So our process is called Get Organized, Get a Plan, Get Ahead. That's our first 3 meetings. So, that's kind of how we run it. Organization, we spend a whole meeting on that, particularly in cash flow planning. For our folks, that's really important, getting an idea where everything's at, including grandparent help and all that. And then, the plan meeting is what you'd expect. It's presenting initial things. But when we say get ahead, it's about implementing the strategies. So part of that implementation is, how do you want to move forward? Would you like to invest with us, or would you like to move forward and do a monthly retainer with us?
So how much do you charge for those first 3 meetings?
So we charge $950 for the initial plan setup and 3 meetings.
Okay, that makes sense. And then what is your ongoing monthly fee?
For families, it's $200. Couples, if we work with them, it's $150.
Okay. So what's the difference between a family and a couple?
So couples don't have kids.
Okay.
Yeah.
So are you working with some couples then that don't have kids and don't need this college process?
We do. We have some. Just based on our age, we started the firm when I was 32 and Ryan was in his late 20s, my partner. So we have just, some friends that come in and want some help that are, they maybe don't have the assets to support things and they're not getting help anywhere else. And so we do have a good process, we think, to serve them as well. And a lot of them have young kids now.
Oh, there you go. And they'll be your long-term prospects. So, okay. So $200 a month. And then are you managing assets?
We are. So I was going to say too, as part of that process, when we're bringing people on and we're talking about our process, we do make it very clear that we only have firm clients. I work a lot with the college expertise, and my partner Ryan helps and it does the financial planning and investment implementation. So, we've kind of, in our firm anyway, we've divided and conquered. So I work on college expertise, and he really helps him with the financial plan and investment management. So,
okay. Do you charge an AUM fee for any investments managed?
We do. So pretty typical 1% of assets under managed up to the first 500,000 and then scaled down from there.
Okay. So overall, there's kind of a few different fees here, but when it's so targeted with your target market, it makes perfect sense. So you have the 350 initial kind of introductory meeting, get things, kind of current reality meeting. Then we have a $950 3-meeting process to kind of create the initial plan. And then it's $200 a month ongoing plus 1% and then scale down from there for any assets that you're managing.
Yep. And part of what we do too is if folks have over 250,000, we will offset that with their investment management fees. So we don't double dip for clients that have over the 250.
Okay. So anything over 250,000 AUM, that monthly fee goes away, which that's kind of the cross point of $2,400 a year is what they would be paying on $250,000 in AUM. And then it just kind of goes AUM from there.
Yep. And it works for our target market because, they're in a very high intense cash flow period. So we've just kind of figured out that those are really our ideal clients that have that anyway. And it's easier for them to pay out of their accounts instead of out of pocket.
Okay. No, that makes perfect sense. And we're seeing more and more larger firms do this where the AUM is just an easier way to pay. And, it's not quite so $200 a month, which I know folks are concerned about. So, they're not having to literally pay you every month and it's just easier to take it out of the investments. But having that monthly retainer, kind of that monthly subscription service allows you to not have to care whether they have assets or not. I suspect a lot of the folks coming to you for this type of service do at least have some level of assets, but they don't have to.
Yeah, I'd say it's about probably 2/3 have the assets we can manage, but some of them, we've got a lot of large corporations and some of it's just all tied up in 401ks. So
fair enough. So one of the questions that we get all the time about niche marketing is, what happens when my niche, outgrows me? So if I work with recently divorced women, what happens 3 years out when they're no longer recently divorced? And this is a great example of kind of a life period, kind of life stage niche. What do you do with them after college, and after they don't need college planning anymore? Are you growing with them or are you saying, hey, we're no longer the advisor for you?
It's interesting. That's kind of our next iteration. So we've been at this 6 years. So we're really just having those first conversation. Kids are done with school. It's all done. The cool part is now we can say, hey, now it's time to focus on you. So we're making that shift. They're still great clients. We've already done retirement planning, but now we're saying, okay, you've got an extra $25,000 a year. What are we going to do with it? So we're being able to shift to that. And we're beginning to develop more resources around how to help students with their student loan payments. So, we've got kids that are graduating and many of them, are going on to grad school. We're getting that first wave of kids coming out of MBA school or things like that. So we're really trying to add value, bring in their kids now, and have a conversation about, hey, here's some basics of personal financial planning. And, you have some student loans. They're reasonable because they worked with us, but you have some and things like that. So we're excited about where that goes, but it's a fun relationship still.
Yeah. And I love that because I do think that ultimately you're going to grow, right? And your firm's going to mature. And like you said, you've been at this long enough now, you're having this kind of post-college wave of folks. And now you can start getting into other areas of specialization, like having, a student loan expert on staff or whatnot to be able to help, because you said up to 1 year of salary with student loans. So obviously, not totally anti-student loans. So these clients, the kids are going to have them. So Absolutely love this. So one of the other things that you mentioned, I believe during the presentation, was just kind of your team. So it's you and your partner, and then who else do you have kind of in your firm?
So it's me and my partner are the only licensed folks that do actual work. And then our primary other person really helps me with all of my events and marketing and newsletter and blog and all the kind of marketing and PR side. So that really is our firm right now. And we've had some other just part-time virtual help, so it's just the two of us in the office and everybody else is virtual.
So what is the future here? Because, and you and I talked a little bit about this in person, but like it's kind of the world is your oyster, right? Like there's so many options and things that you could do. So what are you thinking is going to be the future of your firm and service model and what your life's going to look like and that sort of thing?
Tell me in 2 minutes. In 2 minutes. We're always exploring opportunities. I mean, I think for us, continuing to serve families is thing number one, the families that already work with us and then future families that are addressing this problem. But we're also looking at how do we make a larger impact. And we think that can be done probably through some additional online resources. So we're looking at possibly developing online courses. And then also, I've had a increased demand to do some additional speaking engagements and advisor education, which honestly for me is exciting because, if we can get this kind of message and simplicity out but give advisors tools and families tools to do that, that's what gets me excited because this problem's not going away. It's only getting bigger.
I love it. And I'm sorry for putting you on the spot with that. I think it's important for advisors to recognize that there are some inflection points that'll happen. And when you're just starting a firm, you're not thinking about these upcoming inflection points, but you've hit one you've already gone through, which was the kind of growth and kind of going from, startup mode to a real business. And now you're kind of at that next one, which is you really get to define your life and your business and what you want things to look like. If you want to create a membership service for advisors focused on college planning, you can do that. If you want to become a very well-paid speaker, just travel around the country teaching advisors this stuff, you can do that. If you want to go online for consumers, online for advisors, like there's so much that can be done. In the entrepreneur mind, I think, we tend to just rabbit trail and try to chase all the shiny objects. But you have this awesome business, this awesome core competency that you can also grow and scale. And I don't know how to make that decision. I think it's kind of going based on gut. And what you want to do may change over time. But I think it's a hard choice because, again, we're kind of wired as entrepreneurs to want to try all these different things, even though we have something really good going kind of that we could just sort of stick with if we wanted.
Yeah, it's chasing the shiny things. That's the entrepreneur's curse.
Gift and curse, we'll say.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like starting the business was the shiny object. Fortunately, it worked out well. So, and maybe we'll have to have you back on the show at some point in a few years down the line to hear how you kind of went through some of this decision making. Because again, it's such a crucial thing, I think, to put out there that, hey, this is coming and this does happen to a lot of folks. And that's where we start seeing, the Carl Richards of the world going from being a planner to suddenly he's, out there teaching or, writing for consumers and teaching advisors. I kind of went through this myself and ended up selling my firm and focusing on XY. But a lot of folks make the decision just to stay in the firm and just keep grinding. But, you mentioned something interesting in your presentation too about, having brought on a couple new clients recently and kind of being in that position of like, do we want to keep growing? Because that's the other choice you get to make is like, maybe I just want to stop growing and just kind of cultivate the relationships we have. And again, it's such a challenge to make that decision. And I don't have the answer for how to do it. It's just interesting to hear, the folks that are going through that.
Yeah, it is. And myself and, I've had a great business partner for 7 years and we worked together for longer than that. And I wouldn't trade that for anything, but having someone to bounce ideas off, I can't imagine doing this myself because he's such an integral part of where we're at and having the type of organization we have and allowing me to do the things that I'm actually passionate about.
I hear you. And that's Kitsis for me is that kind of more stable personality. I'm the chase the shiny objects. He's more the, well, maybe not today guy, which if you have that person in your life and you respect them and their opinion, extremely helpful to keep us on track.
So, absolutely.
Any advice for advisors that are out there that either have some, well, I guess first, do you help other advisors? So if I'm out there and I'm working with clients and I've got a situation, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is perfect for Joe. Do you do consultative services with advisors? Or not yet, or not at this point?
We're actually in conversations with a couple of firms here locally that I know and trust, and they trust me. We are a direct competitor, so I'm working with them on what does that relationship look like and how do we structure that. So it's something that we're looking at. Right now we don't have anything formal, but if anybody needs help, they can email me or give me a buzz. I'm happy to help.
Is there a place where you recommend for the folks out there that are really passionate about, this area and say like, hey, this is this is a niche market I'm seeing or I'd love to help in? Like, where can they go to learn more? I mean, where's the education out there for them?
I think probably the best person that really has done a good job, there's a woman named Lynn O'Shaughnessy that I have communicated with. She's a writer and she's a parent that's been through this, and she's developed a lot of great resources, and she has I think is a pretty good course for advisors even now, kind of on this college funding space.
Oh, okay. Good to know.
And then other than that, some other resources partners we have. Fred Amrine is a good, knowledgeable resource, as is Troy Onick. These are all kind of different folks that are, helping advisors, but also have good practices of their own.
Okay. Yeah, it's just so interesting. I think I foresee, probably many models out there like the XY Planning Network that are going to start launching around areas of expertise. And this could definitely be one, because it's not like it's going away anytime soon. So this is going to forever be, or maybe not forever, but at least in the foreseeable future, will continue to be an issue that folks are dealing with. And just having the resources to be able to serve these clients is huge. So
yeah, and I caution, because I mentioned those few names, there are a number of people out there that are professing education and those types of things. But if you dig into them much further, you'll realize that the majority of it is about selling insurance products. So it's being cautious about that. So
it's good to know that that's out there, that I think we would all expect it. But it kind of sounds like maybe this is an area particularly where the insurance folks have gotten their claws in it a little bit. So final question for you. And since you've listened to the show before, you'll know the question that's coming. If you could go back and tell Joe that was looking at starting a firm, or maybe in your first year of business, if you could go back and tell yourself one thing that you wish you had known then that you've learned through this process, what do you think that would be?
Just one?
Just one. You can give two if you got two really good ones.
Well, I have two. One of them I mentioned, so it'll probably take you twice as long and cost twice as much. So make sure that your personal financial house is in order. I know I hear you guys say that a lot, but really take it to heart and make sure that you've got your other spouse or significant other on board. And then the other one is, don't be afraid to think big. I think sometimes we have limiting beliefs, and if you think big and you say, hey, I want to look like that firm, go after it and call those firms that you aspire to be. They'll talk to you. We're in a great industry like that. I wouldn't be where I'm at without having conversations with mature firms and telling them where I want to go, and they're more than willing to help. So,
well, Joe, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show and share your areas of expertise, and best of luck with everything, man. I'm so excited to see what comes next for you.
Thanks so much for having me, and good luck to everybody. And I appreciate what you guys are doing with XYPN, and hopefully I've been able to be a good resource and valuable for folks.
You can see why I emailed Joe the day after we met to get him on this show. He has been pushing the envelope in most of the same ways the XY Planning Network promotes, and is building a business that will support his life. I hope this interview shows you that you can build a strong business using the tenets that we teach on this show, and also build a great life for yourself. Now be sure to join our VIP community at xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to hang out with other XYPN radio listeners, ask questions for future mailbag episodes with myself and Kitsis, and to finally find a community of like-minded financial advisors. Thanks so much for joining me today. We'll see you next time.
You're not alone, and you're not crazy. It's scary starting, building, and growing your own financial planning firm. And that's why we put together a free private community just for you, the Cutting Edge Financial Planner. Go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP or text XYPN Radio to 33344 and join a network of thousands ready to change the lives of Gen X and Gen Y clients.